When a child is placed in foster care in the Evansville area, there are resources available for clothes, hygiene products, toys, and gear to support the new transition. These resources benefit their participation in activities of daily living, also known as ADLs, and play. But one occupation that gets overlooked is education. For children in foster care to thrive in education, they need access to resources and extra support for continuity of education and extra activities despite relocation. Changing schools multiple times can cause children to experience emotional and behavioral problems, become behind in the educational process, not have necessary school materials, and more.
Identifying the impact of foster care. As of 2022, roughly 9,758 of the youth population in Indiana are currently in foster care. In 2022, there were only 4,897 licensed foster care homes in the state of Indiana. The demographic makeup of this population is 74.6% of the youth foster care population, ages 0 to 17, are white, 18% are black, 39.1% are between the ages of 6 and 12, and 36.5% are between the ages of 1 and 5. Neglect and substance abuse are the top two reasons for a child to be removed from the home in the state of Indiana.
So, for the severity of need in Evansville, as of 2017, there were 1,314 children in foster care in Evansville. Currently, there are 500 active placements outside of the home and under 200 foster families in the region. Community level indicators of need are the lack of funding available within the foster care system. In the tri state area, there are more resources and nonprofits than most other regions for unmet needs for children in foster care, but tutoring and spending one on one time reading are the most educational support children in foster care receive. Depending on the situation, children in foster care may have better access to resources needed for school, which is less likely at in home cases, but they're still more disadvantaged than other children who are not in foster care.
Identifying the who of who our presentation will inform is social workers, guidance counselors, school districts, child protective services and Department of Child Services, foster families, and then also teachers and school staff, as well as just general community members that will see this presentation.
The first community resource is Borrowed Hearts Foundation, and they were created to help foster children and foster families with necessities like clothing, hygiene items, food, and more. Since 2016, we've helped over 7,000 kids in foster care and eased the financial burden of foster families in Region 16 and beyond. And below is some contact information, specifically their email, phone, and address.
The overall occupational therapy application for this is preventing dysfunction in foster children regarding their occupation of education. For a person, this looks like providing educational supplies and one on one assistance, such as counseling, tutoring, and any other additional resources. All of these do help the children in foster care maintain educational attendance. For a group, this is supporting the groups for children in foster care to address emotional regulation, social participation, rest, and of course, educational participation. For the whole population, this is educational materials to emphasize the educational needs for foster children in other communities.
Another community resource that currently is in place is Court Appointed Special Advocate, or CASA. CASA is trained volunteers to advocate for the best interests and the needs of the child in the courtroom. These volunteers meet with the child monthly, along with anyone else in the child's life, including but not limited to parents, teachers, and social workers. Contact information for the Evansville CASA is below.
For our stakeholder interview, in order to gain more information about this topic, we interviewed Alyssa Reinfert, and she works for the court appointed special advocate, and as well as Billy Beckham, who works for Borrowed Hearts, that also deals with foster children in the area.
One current community resource is the Isaiah 117 House. It provides a home that foster children can go to while they're in the transition period. Previously, foster children would be removed from the home and then spend their transition time in an office building. This could take hours, even days. These homes provide a comfortable and cozy place for the child to stay with volunteers while welfare staff completes the paperwork. The house also provides a place for the children to bathe, have clean clothes, toys, and other necessities while they are waiting for their foster families. And then we have just listed the contact information for Isaiah 117 House.
These are some of the interview questions that we asked. So we asked, what educational barriers do foster children encounter, and what are the current resources available to help with those barriers? We asked the biggest stressor for foster children when they change schools, and how often do they miss and or change schools. This is kind of a hard question to answer as it's different from child to child. We asked about any behavioral trends that is noticed in foster children in the educational setting and the biggest challenge for them as well. We asked, how long does a foster child typically stay with one foster family, and how supportive are those foster families with helping the student with school? Does this depend on whether the child is with a family member versus with the foster family that they've never met before? And can foster children continue to participate in after-school activities while switching between home and foster care? A lot of these are very specific to who the child is, what their experiences are, and who are they placed with, and what those experiences are of either the foster family or a family member that they are placed with.
And here are the remaining interview questions that we asked. What service opportunities are currently available in the Evansville area to support children in foster care and demonstrating resilience against challenges they may face? What does the average timeline look for a child being placed in foster care? How has the Isaiah 117 house impacted the transition for foster children? On average, what amount of time do children spend there? What is the biggest need you see for a child transitioning, either between foster families, from foster care to adoption, from foster care back to biological family? Is there a gap or difficulty for foster children in accessing the resources they need for school, especially with technology? What specific needs or goals do you want to see met regarding foster care in the Evansville area? Do you have any ideas for how these can be met? And how often are siblings able to stay together in foster care? Could staying with siblings aid in the resilience of foster children?
Occupational therapy is a field that focuses on improving occupational performance for people throughout the lifespan. Occupations can include ADLs, instrumental activities of daily living, work, rest and sleep, education, play, leisure, and social participation. Since children in foster care experience severe and complex trauma responses, there is a need for services for this population. Occupational therapists are qualified to serve this population to facilitate growth, healing, and enhance performance capacity through meaningful everyday activities. The scope of OT for this population includes attachment formation, peer relationships, cognition, educational performance, and the transition to independent living. Our focus is on the educational experience of children in foster care in the Evansville area and how to better serve their needs.
For structures and systems, at the federal level, we have the Family First Prevention Services Act, with the goal of keeping the child safely with their families to decrease the disruption and the strain on the child of being removed from the home. To do this, families are provided with mental health services, substance use treatment, and or parenting skills courses. At the state level, we have the Department of Child Services Educational Services. DCS is responsible for promoting education stability for youth and care and for incorporating strategies to improve educational outcomes. The Education Service Director and Team of Education Liaisons provides knowledge and assistance for a foster children's network to ensure educational needs are being met.
A quick summary for our stakeholder interview of just some of the key topics that we talked about during that interview was that the biggest educational barriers are attendance, lack of support with homework, and then not feeling safe around adults, or the lack of sleep and food, making it hard to concentrate on the school environment, as well as additional layers of trauma added when children in foster care move to a new school. So, difficulties adjusting to a new routine, a new system, feeling isolated, and other stressors of just being around new children in a new environment. And 50% of children in foster care do not graduate high school, and teenagers are most often forgotten about in the foster care system. There are lots of resources and nonprofits in the tri state area, and there are more in our area than in most areas in the country. It can be difficult to attain educational supplies, more so with in home cases. So, just being able to get that school supplies and things that are needed. Specific goals or needs for the area is spreading more awareness about foster care, and then also supporting directly by becoming a foster parent or providing non direct support through donations and just helping in the community.
An article titled Fostering Success in Education, Educational Outcomes of Students in Foster Care in the United States had the purpose of reviewing research and promising programs in the U.S. affecting the educational success of children in foster care. The results were that educational needs of students in foster care can be supported by targeted early intervention and screening, better collaboration between child welfare and education agencies, increased supports and services for students in foster care, educational advocacy for students in foster care, and targeted services for students in foster care to help them prepare for and complete post-secondary education. Overall, more research must be conducted to build evidence on the effectiveness of these approaches to improve the trajectories of children in foster care.
I found an article titled, I Just Want to Be a Regular Kid, a qualitative study of sense of belonging among high school youth in foster care. The level of evidence of this article was 2B with a moderate strength. The summary for this, the foster students just want to feel normal at school, sometimes trying to hide that they are in the foster care system so that they are not treated differently from peers and also by teachers. Foster students emphasize the impact of moving between schools, sometimes very frequently, and not being able to learn the curriculum as other students are able to. One example was moving in the middle of lessons at school and never being able to learn that specific lesson and feeling that they were always behind. So then when they moved to the new school where they were trying to build upon the lesson that had already been learned, that student had never learned it, and not everyone was understanding of this. And then foster students recognize that it is difficult to build positive and trusting relationships with peers and faculty, as they feel as there's just no point because they're going to end up moving again. So this then begins to hurt them in their occupation socially as well.
This article is titled Academic Functioning of Youth in Foster Care, the Influence of Unique Sources of Social Support. The level of evidence of this article is 4B. It is a longitudinal perspective study with moderate strength. The purpose of this article is to understand the sources of social support that are associated with academic functioning from self-reports of 257 youth in foster care and behavioral health reports from teachers. The results from the study show that teachers' social support, compared to parent, friend, or classmate support, was most influential for both academic success and behavioral health in school. Perceived social support from classmates was negatively associated with internalizing symptoms in school. Changes in school placement were not associated with performance or behavioral health. More research is needed to examine the mechanical aspects of social supports from teachers, other types of support, for example, school counselors, coaches, social workers, and providing additional training for teachers to enhance academic achievement for children in foster care.
The title of the next article that was reviewed was Foster Youth's Educational Challenges and Supports Perspectives of Teachers, Foster Parents, and Former Foster Youth. The level of evidence is 4A. It was a participatory action research, and the strength is moderate. The purpose of the article was to explore the barriers and supports of foster children's education through interviews with teachers, foster parents, and former foster youth. The results found that 89% of participants believed that foster children's strained relationships inhibited academic performance. Common barriers discussed included lower expectations, pity, teacher misinterpretation, school cannot be a top priority, complex accommodations, strained foster parent and teacher relationships, lack of home and school partnership. Participants suggested offering more support to foster parents navigating specifically special education services and offering more extracurricular activities to support foster children academically with getting more involved.
Opportunities for positive youth development, the organized activity participation in educational outcomes of adolescents in adoptive foster care. This was a quantitative study with descriptive statistics. This study worked to fill the gaps within the literature by working towards the answers to the following research questions. What is the association of adopted, foster, and kinship care with educational outcomes as compared to youth and parental care? What is the association of AFK care with multiple dimensions of organized activity participation as compared to youth and parental care? Do different dimensions of organized activity participation moderate any association between AFK care and later educational outcomes? The results of this study found that living in AFK care led to significantly lower educational outcomes, but stronger supports are needed during transitional periods and for organizational activities. Notable disparities were found in activity participation between youth in parental care and youth in AFK care. There was about an hour and a half difference. Findings suggest that organized activity participation is likely to be equally as beneficial for youth in AFK care as those in parental care.
The solution we came up with for the identified need is to have a after-school program. For example, this could take place 3 times a week for 2 hours, such as 2:30 and 4:30 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays each week. The staff members for this after-school program include OTs, school staff members, and community organizations that are willing to participate. And this is provided for students in foster care, but we also want to provide this after-school program for other students that qualify, such as low income, children transitioning out of foster care, and new students in the community.
Solutions to identified needs. Activities might include tutoring, social activities such as board games, sports, or school clubs, as well as life skills training, which would be age dependent.
For the consultation process, occupational therapies would work with children to meet goals specific to them. These goals could include money management, obtaining a job and job skills, emotional regulation, meal preparation, and attention to staff. It would also work with other staff such as teachers, guidance counselors, principals, etc., to best support the needs of each child. Evidence that we found to support this process: occupational therapists are equipped to provide transitional services to high risk or at risk populations, such as those in the foster care system, providing skills to transition to new settings, role establishment, routine establishment, and supporting participation in home, work, school, and the community. Providing individuals in the foster care system with instrumental activities of daily living and life skills is necessary for the success of future independent living. To help fill the gaps, occupational therapists should focus on social participation, employment pursuits, financial management, leisure exploration, self-advocacy, and health management/maintenance.
So we have examples of how an occupational therapist can better support this foster children population based off of person, group, and then population as a whole. So for a person, an occupational therapist works with the student to complete activities focusing on their specific goals, like cooking simple meals at home independently, educating on kitchen safety, and then making nutritious food choices. To apply an occupational therapist to a group, an occupational therapist runs an after school group program for high school students to work on filling out job applications, resume building, and working on interview skills. And then on the population level, an occupational therapist creates an educational handout for schools to give to students explaining the zones of regulation and tips on how to shift and maintain these emotional zones independently.
Everyone contributing to this project kind of includes, but is not limited to, the occupational therapist, the social worker, the general education teacher, the special education teacher, the student's advocate, and speech therapist as needed. This is also the typical group that you would see in an IEP meeting for students as well. So it's just the best group of people to look at the needs of what the student is, whether they be in foster care or just participating in this program, and make sure that all of the needs are met.